There I was standing in the middle of LAX, with my suitcase in hand, 15 years old, and buzzing with excitement for what I thought would be our first real family vacation since Mom remarried 6 months ago. My mom, Linda, had just married David, the successful property developer, who seemed to adore her, and he came with two kids of his own, 17-year-old Tyler and 12-year-old Madison. I thought this Hawaii trip would finally be our chance to feel like a real family again, especially after all those years when it was just Mom and me against the world. But as I stood there watching Mom fidget nervously and avoid my eyes, something felt off. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you have ever felt abandoned by someone who was supposed to protect you, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to take a turn that changed everything. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Growing up, it had always been just Mom and me after my father Robert walked out when I was 8 years old. For 7 long years, there was no phone call, no birthday card, no explanation. Nothing. Mom worked herself to the bone with 2 jobs, pulling shifts as a receptionist during the week and catering events on weekends just to keep our little apartment in Van Nuys. I watched her cry herself to sleep some nights, wondering how she was going to pay the rent or buy groceries. When she met David through a dating app about a year ago, I was genuinely happy for her. Finally, someone who could take care of her the way she deserved. David seemed like everything Dad was not. He drove a brand new BMW, owned a beautiful house in Beverly Hills, and always picked up the check when we went out to dinner. But as the months went on, I started noticing the subtle ways I was being positioned as the outsider in this new family dynamic. During our family dinners at those fancy restaurants David loved, he would automatically pay for Tyler and Madison's meals, but somehow Mom always ended up covering mine. When we moved into David's house, Tyler and Madison got the spacious master bedrooms with walk-in closets and private bathrooms, while I was given the small guest room at the end of the hall. Tyler made it crystal clear that he saw me as some kind of charity case his dad was stuck with. He would make snide comments about my clothes being from Target, while he strutted around in designer everything. Madison, spoiled rotten by her daddy David, would throw tantrums whenever she did not get her way, and somehow I was always expected to be the mature one who understood why she needed to come first. David was polite to my face, but I could feel the difference in how he treated his biological children versus me. They were his priority, and I was just the extra baggage that came with marrying my mom. For 2 weeks, I listened to them planning this elaborate Hawaii vacation, assuming I was not included since nobody had mentioned it to me directly. I had made peace with staying home. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez next door could check on me, and I could use the time to catch up on summer reading. Then one evening, Mom suddenly announced that I would be joining them after all. I was over the moon, immediately starting to research all the fun activities we could do together in Maui. I spent hours online looking up the best beaches, hiking trails, and restaurants, making mental notes of things to suggest to help bond our blended family. The shopping trip for the vacation told me everything I needed to know about my place in the family hierarchy. While David dropped hundreds of dollars on new swimwear and resort clothes for Tyler and Madison, Mom quietly bought me a few basic items from the clearance rack. I did not complain. I was just grateful to be included and excited about the possibility of finally connecting with my step-siblings in a relaxed setting, away from all the tension at home. The morning of our departure, I woke up at 4 in the morning, too excited to sleep. My suitcase had been packed for days, carefully folded with every outfit I owned that seemed appropriate for a tropical vacation. But as we got ready to leave for the airport, I noticed Mom acting strangely nervous, checking her phone constantly and refusing to make eye contact with me. David and the kids seemed casual and normal, joking around about all the activities they had planned. I carried my own luggage to the car, while David helped Tyler and Madison with theirs, but I brushed off that weird feeling, chalking it up to normal travel day stress. When we arrived at the check-in counter, David confidently approached with what looked like 4 boarding passes in his hand. I stood behind him with my suitcase, waiting for him to motion me forward so I could check my bag with everyone else's. The airline agent smiled professionally and asked, "How many passengers are we checking in today?" David replied without hesitation, "4 passengers." I felt my stomach drop as confusion washed over me. I stepped closer thinking maybe there was some mistake or miscommunication. The agent looked at her computer screen and nodded. "Perfect, I see 4 passengers on this reservation. Would you like to check any bags today?" That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. I approached David and the agent, my heart starting to race. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where is my ticket?" David looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not mean exactly, but completely indifferent, as if I was a stranger asking him for directions. "There are only 4 tickets, Penelope," he said matter-of-factly, as if that explained everything. I turned to look at my mom, desperate for her to fix whatever horrible mistake this obviously was. But when our eyes finally met, I saw something that broke my heart into a million pieces. She looked guilty, ashamed, and completely defeated. She gently took my arm and pulled me away from the check-in counter, away from David and his kids, who were now watching our conversation with barely concealed interest. "Honey, we need to talk," Mom said, her voice shaking slightly. I could feel my whole world starting to crumble as she struggled to find the words. "This is really a family trip for David and his kids," she finally managed to say. "You understand, right? It is important for me to bond with Tyler and Madison to show David that I can be a good stepmother to his children." I stared at her in complete disbelief. "But, Mom, I am your daughter. I am family too. I am your actual family." She looked around nervously, clearly aware that we were having this conversation in the middle of a busy airport with people walking past us constantly. "Of course you are family, sweetheart, but this is different. This is about my new marriage, about making sure David knows that his kids come first in my priorities. You know how Tyler has been adjusting to having us in his space. David specifically wanted some quality time with just his biological children, and I need to respect that if I want this marriage to work." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own mother was choosing her new husband's comfort over her own daughter's well-being. "So where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. "You cannot just leave me here at the airport, Mom. I am 15 years old." She glanced at her watch nervously and reached into her purse, pulling out $200 in cash. "You are 15, Penelope, and you are so mature for your age. You have always been good at figuring things out on your own." She pressed the money into my hands as if that somehow made everything okay. "Take the airport shuttle back to the house. Mrs. Rodriguez next door has our spare key. I already arranged it with her. You can order pizza, watch movies, have the whole place to yourself. It will be like a little vacation of your own." I could not believe what I was hearing. My mother was literally abandoning me at the airport so she could go play happy family with people who had made it clear they did not want me around. Just then, Tyler walked past us on his way back from the bathroom, and I caught the smirk on his face as he overheard our conversation. "Looks like it is just family after all," he said quietly, but loud enough for both Mom and me to hear. Madison appeared beside him, tugging on David's sleeve with her usual demanding energy. "Daddy, are we going to miss our flight? You promised we could get first-class seats together." David approached us with an impatient expression, checking his expensive watch. "Linda, we really need to go through security now if we want to make our boarding time. The first-class lounge closes early today." I watched my mother's face as she was pulled between her guilt over abandoning me and her fear of disappointing her new family. The choice she made in that moment changed everything between us forever. "Penelope, you can figure it out," she said with a helpless shrug that I will never forget. "You always do. I have to go now. David already paid for everything, and it would be such a waste to miss the flight." She gave me a quick, awkward hug that felt more like an obligation than affection. "We will talk when I get back, okay? Maybe we can plan our own little trip, just the two of us." I stood there speechless as my mother walked away from me, following David and his kids toward the security checkpoint. Tyler looked back once and gave me a little mocking wave, as if my abandonment was somehow entertaining to him. Madison was already chattering excitedly about the snorkeling excursions they had planned, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world had just been destroyed. And just like that, they disappeared through security, leaving me completely alone in the middle of LAX with nothing but $200 and the crushing realization that my own mother had chosen a man she had known for 1 year over the daughter she had raised for 15. Standing there in the middle of one of the busiest airports in the world, I felt completely invisible as thousands of people rushed past me toward their own destinations, their own families, their own lives. The irony was not lost on me. Here I was surrounded by people, yet I had never felt more alone in my entire life. A security guard noticed me standing motionless with my suitcase and approached with a concerned expression. "Miss, are you okay? You look a little lost." I tried to explain my situation without breaking down completely, and while he was sympathetic, there was nothing he could do except suggest I contact a family member or find transportation home. That is when I remembered something I had not thought about in years. 2 years ago, during one of Mom's angry rants about how my father had ruined our lives, she had thrown away a business card that had somehow made its way to our mailbox. But I had secretly retrieved it from the trash and kept it hidden in my wallet, not really knowing why. Maybe some part of me always hoped that one day I might be brave enough to reach out, or maybe I just wanted to hold on to the possibility that my father was not the complete monster Mom always made him out to be. I pulled out my wallet with shaking hands and found the card now wrinkled and faded but still readable. Robert Ashworth, CEO, Ashworth Investment Group. For 7 years, Mom had told me over and over again that he chose to leave us, that he did not want to be bothered with the responsibility of a daughter, that I should not give him the satisfaction of thinking I needed him. But sitting there on that uncomfortable airport chair, abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally, I realized I had absolutely nothing left to lose. My hands were trembling as I dialed the number, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A professional-sounding woman answered on the second ring. "Ashworth Investment Group, Mr. Ashworth's office. How may I help you?" I took a deep breath and said the words I had never thought I would say. "Hi, this is Penelope. I am Robert Ashworth's daughter." There was a long pause, and I could hear muffled conversation in the background. "Please hold for just one moment," the woman said, and suddenly I was listening to soft instrumental music, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. Then the music stopped, and I heard a voice I had not heard in 7 years, a voice that sounded older and more tired than I remembered, but unmistakably my father. "Penelope, baby, is that really you?" The emotion in his voice was immediate and overwhelming. I started crying right there in the middle of the airport, not caring who was watching or what they might think. "Dad, I am stuck at LAX," I managed to say between sobs. "Mom left me here. She abandoned me to go on vacation with her new family, and I do not know what to do." I told him everything. About David and his kids, about being treated like an outsider in my own family, about standing at the check-in counter while my mother chose a tropical vacation over her own daughter's well-being. My father listened to every word, and I could hear his anger building with each detail I shared. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before he spoke, and when he did, his voice was filled with a fury I had never heard from him before. "She did what?" he said, and I could hear him moving around, probably pacing his office. "Penelope, I want you to stay exactly where you are. Do not move, do not go anywhere with anyone. Daddy is coming to get you right now." Hearing him call himself Daddy for the first time in 7 years made me cry even harder. But these were different tears. Tears of relief, of hope, of the possibility that maybe I was not as alone in the world as I thought. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," he continued, and I could hear what sounded like him giving rapid instructions to someone in the background. "This should never have happened to you. What your mother did is unforgivable, and I am going to make sure you never have to go through anything like this ever again." For the next 3 hours, I sat in that same airport chair, getting regular text updates from my father, as he arranged for his private jet to fly from New York to Los Angeles. "Taking off now, baby. Should be there in 5 hours. Flying over Denver. I am bringing you white roses. I remember they were your favorites when you were little. Landing in 20 minutes. Look for a man in a navy suit carrying flowers." When I finally saw him walking toward me through the crowd, I almost did not recognize him. He was older, more distinguished looking with silver hair at his temples and an expensive suit that made David's flashy style look cheap by comparison. But his eyes were exactly the same. And when he saw me, his face lit up with a joy that I had forgotten was possible. I ran straight into his arms, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt completely safe. "I am so sorry I never called," I whispered into his shoulder, but he shook his head and held me tighter. "No, baby, I am sorry. I should have fought harder for you. I should have never let your mother take you away from me." As we walked toward his private jet, he explained that Mom had moved us multiple times without leaving forwarding addresses, had changed our phone numbers, and had blocked every attempt he made to contact me. "I never stopped looking for you, Penelope. I never stopped loving you." The private jet was like something out of a movie. Leather seats, a flight attendant who offered me gourmet snacks, and a level of luxury I had never experienced. But more than the material comfort, it was the way my father looked at me, as if I was the most precious thing in his world, that began to heal something inside me that had been broken for a very long time. During the flight to New York, he showed me photos on his phone. Pictures of a beautiful penthouse apartment with Central Park views, and one bedroom that was clearly meant for me, decorated in soft blues and whites, with bookshelves already filled with novels he thought I might like. "I have been setting money aside for your college fund every month since I started my business," he told me, his voice thick with emotion. "And I started a foundation that provides scholarships for kids from broken homes. I named it after you." As I listened to him talk about the life he had been building in hopes that someday I might be part of it, I began to realize that everything Mom had told me about my father was a lie. He had not abandoned us. She had stolen me away from him. My father's penthouse apartment was everything he had promised and more. My bedroom overlooked Central Park, and it was clear that every detail had been chosen with love and careful thought. There were framed photos on the dresser, pictures of me throughout the years that he had somehow managed to collect, probably taken from my social media accounts or through private investigators. The closet was stocked with clothes in my exact size, and the bookshelves contained every novel I had ever mentioned loving in the few posts he had been able to see online. Robert's girlfriend Sarah turned out to be nothing like the evil stepmother I had imagined in my worst nightmares. She was warm, intelligent, and genuinely excited to meet me. "Your father talks about you constantly," she told me over dinner that first night. "He has been preparing for your return for years." The three of us fell into an easy routine. Family dinners every night where we actually talked about our day's weekend trips to museums and Broadway shows and therapy sessions, with a kind psychologist who specialized in helping teenagers heal from abandonment trauma. Within a week, I was enrolled in a prestigious private school where nobody knew my story unless I chose to tell it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, like I was valued and wanted exactly as I was. My father made sure I knew that this was not charity or obligation. This was love, pure and simple, the kind of father-daughter relationship I had dreamed about, but never thought I would actually experience. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, my mother was returning from her perfect family vacation in Hawaii, probably expecting to find me sulking in my room ready to forgive her betrayal in exchange for some cheap souvenir and a half-hearted apology. Instead, she found my room completely empty. Every piece of clothing, every book, every small memento of my childhood, all of it was gone. On my bed was a simple note written in my careful handwriting. "You were right, Mom. I figured it out. Penelope." But that was not the only surprise waiting for her. Taped to the front door of our old apartment was an eviction notice. What my mother did not know was that David had never intended to keep paying rent on our old place. He had assumed we would be living in his house permanently. What she also did not know was that my father had been anonymously paying a portion of our rent for years through a property management company, trying to make sure his daughter had a stable home, even though he was not allowed to be part of her life. When Mom showed up at David's house in Beverly Hills, frantic and desperate for answers, she found very little sympathy waiting for her. David was annoyed by her emotional outburst, reminding her coldly that she had assured him I could figure it out on my own. Tyler smirked and said, "I thought she was going to handle everything herself." "Is not that what you said at the airport?" Even little Madison seemed confused by Mom's sudden concern for my well-being, asking innocently, "But Mommy Linda, you said Penelope was too mature to need a vacation with us." Desperate and starting to panic, Mom called every number she could think of. Mrs. Rodriguez, my old school, even some of my friends' parents. Mrs. Rodriguez told her that a professional moving company had come the day after they left for Hawaii and had packed up everything in my room with military precision. When Mom finally thought to call family court to report me as a missing person, she discovered that my father had already filed for emergency custody and that I was safe sound and exactly where I wanted to be. The custody hearing was brief and brutal. My father's lawyer had obtained the security footage from LAX, showing the moment my mother abandoned me at the airport. They had testimonies from Mrs. Rodriguez about the years of financial instability documentation of the eviction notice, and most damning of all, they had my own written statement about years of emotional neglect and the trauma of being abandoned for a family vacation. Mom's lawyer tried to argue that she had made an error in judgment, that she was under pressure to prioritize her new marriage, but the judge was not impressed. "Mrs. Patterson," he said sternly, "you voluntarily abandoned your 15-year-old daughter at an international airport to go on a luxury vacation. The court sees no evidence that you prioritized this child's well-being at any point in the situation." When my mother finally managed to get my father to agree to meet her at a coffee shop in Manhattan, she was a completely different person from the woman who had walked away from me at LAX. She looked exhausted, defeated, and desperate. "You cannot just steal my daughter, Robert," she said, but there was no real fight left in her voice. My father looked at her with an expression of pure disgust. "I did not steal her, Linda. You threw her away at LAX like a piece of garbage. Game over." He showed her printed screenshots of the security footage, and I watched from across the coffee shop as my mother saw herself from an outside perspective for the first time, walking away from her own child, following her new husband and his kids toward a vacation that was more important to her than her daughter's emotional well-being. The shame on her face was almost enough to make me feel sorry for her. Almost. 6 months after that terrible day at the airport, I was thriving in ways I had never imagined possible. I was on the honor roll at my new school, had made genuine friends who liked me for who I was, rather than tolerating me as an obligation, and most importantly, I had healed my relationship with my father. Every day I spent with him, I discovered more lies that my mother had told me about why he left, and I began to understand that she had been the architect of our family's destruction from the very beginning. Mom did eventually divorce David, though not by choice. He left her for a younger woman he met at his country club, taking Tyler and Madison, and leaving her with nothing but debt and regret. She reached out to me multiple times, begging for another chance, promising that things would be different if I would just come home. But I had learned something important about setting boundaries and protecting my own emotional well-being. "You are welcome in my life, Mom," I told her during one of our brief phone conversations, "but you will never be my primary parent again. You made your choice at LAX, and now I have made mine." We maintain limited contact now. Birthday phone calls, holiday cards, the occasional awkward coffee when I am visiting Los Angeles. But the trust that was broken that day can never be fully repaired. That day at LAX taught me that family is not who you are related to. It is who shows up when you need them most. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you will fail you in the most spectacular ways possible. But that does not mean you are unworthy of love or destined to be alone. My father spent 7 years fighting to get back to me, and my mother spent 15 years taking me for granted until she finally threw me away for something she thought was better. I learned that being abandoned can actually be a gift. It forces you to discover just how strong you really are, and sometimes it leads you exactly where you were meant to be all along. So tell me in the comments below, have you ever had to choose between the family you were born with and the family that actually loves you? Have you ever discovered that someone you thought had abandoned you was actually fighting for you all along? I would love to hear your stories. And if this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family trauma. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being treated as an afterthought. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You are valuable, you are loved, and you deserve to be someone's first choice, not their backup plan, not their